Mas tpopl lost ther lut I feel easier it life doesn't destroy most people all at once. It wears them down quietly, through hesitation, avoidance, and the slow habit of playing small. Most people don't fail dramatically, they drift. They delay. They wait. And one day they look back and realize they never truly showed up for their own life. Here's the truth no one wants to hear. Failure isn't the real danger. The real danger is living half in, keeping a part of yourself in reserve so you always have an excuse. Because years later, what if I failed? Hurts far less than that question echoes forever. Theunavo die dfflty off if. Life is difficult. Not occasionally, not for some people. For everyone, no matter your background, intelligence, talent, or privilege, you will face pain, loss, confusion, rejection, and fear. This is not a personal injustice. It is the price of being alive. And that reality creates a fork in the road. One path is courage, the other is retreat. When people don't consciously choose courage, they don't remain neutral. They slide into avoidance. Avoidance feels safe. It feels reasonable. It feels intelligent. But avoidance has a cost that compounds quietly. Disappointment becomes frustration. Frustration becomes bitterness. Bitterness becomes resentment. And resentment doesn't stay passive. It looks for someone to blame. This is how ordinary people, not villains, not monsters, slowly become forces of destruction in their own lives and in the lives of others, not because they are evil, but because they abandoned responsibility for what they could have been. Most people believe this lie. If I stay small, I stay safe. But staying small doesn't protect you. It slowly poisons you. THECHIDEORENGAG. The fact that life is short and unpredictable can terrify you into hiding. It can convince you to avoid risk, avoid commitment, avoid responsibility. But those same facts can also wake you up. Because if you think clearly, you realize something unavoidable. You are already involved. You didn't choose to exist. But now that you do, you are already all in. Time is passing whether you act or not. Consequences are accumulating whether you choose or not. So hiding isn't neutral. It's a decision. And if you're already committed by default, you might as well commit voluntarily. You might as well engage. And the deepest form of engagement with life is truth. Many people believe the smart strategy in life is manipulation. They shape their words carefully. They avoid saying what they really think. They dodge responsibility. They try to control outcomes, and sometimes it works. You can gain advantage. You can protect your image. You can delay discomfort. But manipulation rests on a dangerous assumption that you know exactly what you need. Most people don't. What we want is often shaped by fear, ego, insecurity, or comparison. And when you chase those things, you lose alignment with reality. That's where self-betrayal begins. Truth is different. Truth demands something terrifying. You must let go of control over consequences. When you decide to say what you genuinely believe and act in alignment with your values, you no longer get to manage every outcome. And that is why people avoid truth. But here is the paradox. If you don't control everything, you don't know what will happen. And that uncertainty, that unpredictability, is where adventure lies. Truth places you on the edge of the unknown. And there is nothing more alive than that. RE, when you live truthfully, you gain something manipulation can never give you. Reality on your side. You stop fighting the world. You stop maintaining lies. You stop leaking energy. Reality becomes your ally. And that is an unbeatable position. DUHYTASA morale oblige eon. If you hide what's inside you, your intelligence, your effort, your courage, your contribution, something dark happens. A new's potential doesn't disappear. It turns inward. People who don't pursue what they could become often become resentful toward those who do. They mock ambition, they criticize competence, they undermine effort, not because success is wrong, but because it reminds them of what they avoided. Resentment always wants to destroy what it was too afraid to build. This is why hiding is not harmless. When you don't add to the world what you could add, you don't just lose your future. You begin subtracting from the world around you. That is why facing life honestly is a responsibility. TIDLANTA compromiso. Every human being carries an image of who they could be. That image can guide you, or it can crush you. When the gap between who you are and who you think you should be becomes too large, it doesn't motivate. It paralyzes. You feel ashamed, overwhelmed, inadequate. And when that happens, people do one of two things. They abandon the ideal completely, or they lower their standards so much that nothing meaningful remains. Both paths lead to regret, but there is a third option. If the dragon is too big to fight, you don't deny its existence, you shrink it. SKIMTHEIDAL. The problem isn't the ideal. The problem is the scale. If your goal is so large that you are unwilling to move toward it today, it's not noble. It's destructive. You are not meant to leap from where you are to perfection. Growth happens in increments. You scale the challenge down until it is small enough that you are willing to act. Even if the step feels trivial, even if it feels embarrassing, movement matters more than magnitude. TT Sasirati OF momentum. Reality works on momentum. When you move forward even slightly, things begin to accelerate. Growth is not linear, it compounds. When you improve, even by a small margin, confidence builds. Opportunities and skills stack, but decline is different. When you fall behind, the descent is steep. Small failures cascade quickly. That's why the direction matters more than the speed. Upward movement, even slow, beats standing still every time. Every meaningful journey begins with embarrassment. And that is not a flaw, it's a requirement. Startine GATHE boot tom, everyone begins weak. Everyone starts somewhere humiliating. You don't walk into a new domain confident and capable. You stumble, you struggle, you feel exposed. That discomfort is not a signal to quit. It's proof you're in the right place. If you want to strengthen what is weak, you must first admit that it is weak. Yes, that admission carries shame, but shame fades. Regret does not. THE comparison TRA. One of the fastest ways to destroy motivation is comparing yourself to the wrong people. We live in a world where you can observe the most successful, articulate, disciplined individuals on the planet at any moment. And if you compare yourself to them, you will always lose. That is not your comparison group. You don't know their history, their sacrifices, their private suffering. You are comparing your behind the scenes to their highlight reel. That comparison is unfair and deadly. The only valid comparison is who you were yesterday. Yoan to yourself warkas. You are the only control group that makes sense. Your talents are unique. Your limitations are unique. Your responsibilities and tragedies are unique. Comparing yourself to someone else ignores everything that matters. But comparing yourself to your past self is honest. It allows for progress without arrogance and ambition without despair. Aim high, but measure locally. The fum e samo iso in elc's life. When people envy others, they rarely want the full reality. They want the success without the pressure, the rewards without the responsibility, the admiration without the cost. But life doesn't work like that. Every advantage carries a burden. When you envy someone, you are often wishing for an impossible trade, their strengths without their problems. That fantasy breeds bitterness. You don't get a life without problems. You only get to choose which problems you are willing to carry. Uhypop do notishange. Doing nothing is easy. It requires no courage, no justification, no risk. The real question is, why do anything at all? The answer must be that something is worth it. At some point, you must decide that there is a version of your life, despite its suffering, that justifies the effort required to pursue it. Without that belief, action collapses. Responsibility is not a trap, it is the source of meaning. Team IGHDOF response I. Responsibility gives your actions weight. It connects your choices to reality. Avoidance feels safe in the short term, but it empties life from the inside. Most people don't suffer from too much responsibility. They suffer from too little. Commitment is frightening, but half commitment guarantees regret. T chustof bing a health en. One of the most destructive habits is partial commitment. When you only try halfway, failure feels safer. You can always say, I didn't really try, but that excuse costs you everything. Because you never find out who you could have been. You are already all in by being alive. The only question is whether you choose that voluntarily or let life drag you there unwillingly. If you don't bring into the world what you could bring, you don't just lose your future. You become hostile toward anyone who reminds you of it. And that is the path most people never notice until it's too late. Habto boild, but lefi war thkring. The gap between who you are and who you could be was never meant to shame you. It exists for one reason only: to give you direction. If your future feels overwhelming, it's not because you're incapable. It's because you're trying to become everything at once. And that destroys more lives than failure ever could. A meaningful life does not begin with motivation. It begins with orientation. You don't need to know every step. You don't need certainty. You don't need guarantees. You need a direction that feels worth suffering for. Most people drift because they never decide who they are trying to become. They wait for clarity to arrive on its own. But clarity comes after movement, not before. You aim first, you refine later. And the aim does not have to be perfect, it only has to be honest. Tichi deferenci BTWE MMIND A and Kiempirangi. There is a crucial distinction most people never learns. Aiming at something is not the same as comparing yourself to it. When you compare yourself to an ideal, you measure distance. When you aim at an ideal, you measure direction. Distance can paralyze, direction empowers. You can aim high without using the target as a weapon against yourself. R.E. Oak, HYPOPLEGIVUP. People don't quit because they're weak. They quit because they confuse where they're going with where they currently are. T power O of my CRO, calm IT mentis. Once you have a direction, the question becomes simple. What does this look like today? Not tomorrow, not next year, today. Big goals are built from small, repeatable actions, and those actions must be small enough that you are willing to do them even on your worst days. If the task is so large that you avoid it, it's badly designed. Discipline is not about intensity, it's about consistency. Which way smell steps more K. Small steps do something powerful. They create momentum. When momentum exists, motivation becomes unnecessary. You stop negotiating with yourself every day. You stop waiting to feel ready. You act because acting is now part of who you are. Identity changes through behavior, not intention. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Biologiswystems instido Dreams are fragile. They depend on mood. Systems are stable. They function even when you don't feel like it. A system is simply this: a structure that makes the right action easier than the wrong one. If your environment is designed poorly, willpower will fail every time. STR used to your ice nada parasan. Many people resist structure because they think it kills freedom. But unstructured lives are ruled by impulse. Structure does not remove freedom, it creates it. When your basics are handled, when your days have shape, your mind becomes free. Free to think, free to create, free to grow. A schedule is not a cage. It's a map to the day you actually want. Most people build schedules based on obligation. I have to do this. I should do that. I must survive the day. That guarantees burnout. Instead, ask a different question. If I were designing the best possible ordinary day, what would it look like? Not a fantasy day, a realistic one. One that includes effort, rest, progress, and meaning. When your day is worth living, your life becomes worth continuing. Yourself. One of the hardest truths to accept is that you are not automatically aligned with yourself. You tell yourself to do things, and then you don't do them. You make plans and then sabotage them. This doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human. You are not your own slave. You are your own negotiation partner. You must treat yourself as someone you are responsible for helping. Self-hatred does not produce discipline. It produces rebellion. DSIPI and bile tone respite. People who hate themselves try to rule their lives through force. They crack the whip. They shame themselves. They threaten themselves. And then they procrastinate. Because no one works well for a boss they despise. Discipline built on respect is sustainable. You set rules you can keep. You reward progress. You adjust when something fails. This is how adults live. Many people avoid clarity intentionally. They never fully define what they want. They never commit completely because clarity creates accountability. If you try half-heartedly and fail, you can say, well, I didn't really try. But if you go all in and fail, there are no excuses left. That fear keeps people stuck for decades. Sitting on the fence doesn't protect you from failure. Teach price AOF none, co-MITMNT. If you want something meaningful, something difficult, what are the odds you'll achieve it without full commitment? 0. Half effort produces half lives. And the tragedy is not failing. The tragedy is never knowing what you are capable of. Suffering peros. A meaningful life does not eliminate suffering. It justifies it. You don't escape anxiety, loss, or pain. You decide what makes them worth enduring. Without purpose, suffering feels cruel. With purpose, suffering becomes fuel. Aruk. Tichi Rayulku esto. The question is not, how do I avoid pain? The question is, what pain am I willing to carry? COOCGIUBRDEN. Everyone carries weight. The weight of effort or the weight of regret. The weight of responsibility. One gets heavier with time, the other gets lighter. You choose daily. FROMDYSTODCALESES. Lives are not ruined in a single decision. They are built or destroyed in ordinary moments. In the decision to show up today, to take the small step, to keep the promise you made to yourself. Over time, those moments compound. And one day you wake up, living inside the consequences of who you've been practicing becoming. Ari, you are becoming. Whether you like it or not, you are becoming someone. The only question is whether you chose that person deliberately. You do not need to save the world. You do not need to be perfect. You only need to stop lying to yourself about what you could fix. And then fix one small thing. Order emerges from that. Confidence emerges from that. Meaning emerges from that. If the world feels broken, unfair, or disappointing, ask yourself one brutal question. Are you acting in a way that justifies your resentment? Because resentment without responsibility rots the soul. But responsibility, even imperfectly carried, redeems. You don't get out of life alive. You're already all in. So you might as well commit voluntarily. Speak honestly. Act courageously. Take responsibility. Build something small. Then build something larger. And one day, when you look back, you won't ask, what if I had tried? You'll know.